Through the stories shared on the show, you will find real-life triumphs of adversity.
Triumph and adversity, inspiration and motivation.
Grab a hold of your life.
Grab a hold.
It's time to be determined to set your goals and achieve them.
Achieve your goals.
Set your goals high.
Set them high.
Reach for Mars. If you land on the moon, it's still a huge moral victory.
Reach for Mars.
Get ready to be inspired on The Determined Show, hosted by Mark Garman.
The Determined Show.
Good evening, everyone. Mark Garman here with The Determined Show. As always, I try to bring on a guest each and every week. They come on and share their testimony, and with the hopes that you can pull out a piece of their testimony and carry it along and bring it with you. And you can relate to them. And as long as you can gain something from their testimony, it comes out to be something beautiful in the long run. And tonight, I have Cary, who is going to be sharing his testimony with us. He had a stroke 2 years ago, and obviously, as we know in our community, once we suffer a traumatic event like that, it throws our life into a whole different direction. But that didn't stop Cary from carrying on in the same path that he was already in. He jumped right back into what he was doing before. And we also have the number one co-host in the world, Dr. Olivo here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Cary first. Hey, Cary.
There we go.
Before you jump in and start explaining who you are, why don't you explain who that beautiful woman is next to you?
Yes.
Push the computer back a little bit so we can see both of you guys.
There we go.
There we go.
How's that? Okay.
There we go.
Well, everyone, I'm Cary Zinn, and this is my wife, Heidi Zinn.
Hi there.
Married almost 29 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, almost 29 years.
Okay. Nice.
Hi, Mark.
Do you want more to that, or are you going to?
And so, no, go. Yeah, so go ahead, and why don't we tell the community who Cary Zinn, what Cary Zinn was, who Cary Zinn was pre-stroke.
Okay. All right. Well, hi, everyone. I hope that being here tonight will I hope it just helps anybody listening. And we'll start off real quick. Basically, I've been a teacher for about 12 years. It's my second career. I teach junior high. It's a STEM lab. Before that, I was in business and sales and golf, love golf. And anyways, 2007 hit, and I had to make a change because business was horrible. And I got my teaching credential, and here we are. Up to 10 years into my teaching career, May 14th came around, and that was a Monday. That weekend, my wife was actually in Hawaii celebrating our niece's graduation. So it was just me and our two kids at home for the weekend. And I had noticed that I just was kind of feeling tired. And I noticed that I went up to make some food for the kids, and it's like my balance, it was a little slippery. And but I didn't think anything of it. I actually took a nap. I slept. I never take a nap. So I slept for 4 hours. And but I still didn't think anything of it. So anyways, the morning, the 14th, By the way, 99% of strokes usually happen between 3 a.m. and 9 a.m. because we're dehydrated from sleeping. And anyways, got up, got the kids ready for school. That was the day for kids STAR testing in California. And so I knew if anything else, I had to get to school. I had to get them started. I didn't want anything to get in the way of the kids. That was just my thought frame. I didn't want anything to mess. Yeah,
that's a teacher right there. Teacher mind frame right there. Kids first, right?
Kids first. And I dropped my kids off, and the closer I got to work, I noticed my right side started losing just strength and started feeling weak. It didn't want to hold on to the steering wheel anymore. And I didn't think it was a stroke at all. I kind of thought that something was pinching my neck, cutting the nerve off, and because I've had that before in my life.
Right.
And so a stroke was really far away from what I thought the problem was until I got about 5.
So were you just like trying to maybe stretch it out or something, or?
Well, I was trying to hold my right hand. I was trying to hold the steering wheel. It just didn't want to do it. And so I just let it stay in my lap. I drove left-handed. And when I knew it was a stroke is about 5 minutes before, and my right side started getting numb. And I remember looking in the rearview mirror, I'm like, okay, hold on a second. First aid says right side, one of your sides is starting to go down. Numbness in your face or other areas, drooping in your face. I look in the rearview mirror, and this lip is just kind of hanging a little bit. But I was like, it's probably just me. But the numbness was, I just remember going, whoa, wait a minute, Lord, am I having a stroke right now? I'm like 5 minutes from work. I go, I got to get the students off. I got to get their testing going, and then I'll leave. And so I got to work. I went to my classroom. I started you have to say things for the kids for the test. You have to explain things. As I started to speak, I was going, my speech was not matching what I was thinking in my head. And I'm looking at my students. This is kind of funny, but I'm looking at my students. They don't notice anything. They're just, they're zoned. They're ready to take a test. They're like, it's Monday morning.
What is this guy talking about?
And I'm like going, wow, something is really wrong, but I'm going to get through this. Well, I slowed down. I worked really hard to say it clearly, what I had to say. Got them going, and I texted my principal and said, I got to go. Something's wrong health-wise with me. Yeah. And they called the ambulance. From there, it just started turning into a huge God story where one of the coolest things was our children attend Christian and Calvary Marietta. We know the principal really well. Well, the EMT who puts me in the ambulance, he starts telling me, he goes, hey, Cary, just want you to know your kids are just fine. McCall, it has them. McCall's the principal. And I'm just thinking, who are you? I'm like, and how do you know about my kids? And so and then he said, he goes, oh, I'm actually McCall's husband. And both of them go to the same church. I knew of a Tyler, but I hadn't met him yet. Well, Tyler was my first angel, basically in the ambulance ride. And from that point on, soon as he said who he was, I just had this peace that, the Lord will give you, the peace that passes all understanding. And I was like, wow, okay, hold on. I have a stroke. That's true. I'm still kind of moving. I'm still kind of thinking. I'm definitely not sharp, but I'm laying there, and this guy told me everything's okay. And so from that point on, I realized, okay, God knew I was going to have a stroke that morning. He started, he already had everything planned out. Yeah. My wife is in Hawaii. She doesn't even know yet.
Oh, wow.
I mean, yeah. And so, yeah, it was one of those, like, I got to the hospital and I could kind of walk a little bit. And basically, they did the MRI and the CT, and they're like, oh yeah, definitely left parietal region. I think it was a 6 millimeter schema, and that's it right over your. It happened right over your internal capsule.
Okay, let's not jump into that quite yet. Real quick.
All right.
All right.
Take a breath.
Because we're gonna bring in Dr. Olivo.
Yay.
Okay, so we're actually gonna tag team this. So Cary, explain what Heidi does, what Heidi is.
Okay, so probably one of the best parts of my whole medical team, besides Dr. Olivo,
Dr. Olivo
is my wife. She is SLP, and when I was released from acute care, we definitely agreed to put her on my medical team, and it was just priceless, because I had someone at home who, wow, I'm talking as good as I am right now because of her, no doubt about it.
Explain what an SOP is for those that don't know.
Okay, do you want to go?
No, you go.
That is a speech language pathologist.
Okay.
And most people think, oh, they're just in the schools and they tell people with their R's and S's. It's a lot more than that. That you would not, unless you went. I feel like I've been through her schooling with her. You have to have a master's. It's a high medical thought. Actually, you probably would be better at this part.
Okay.
Anyways, it takes a lot of schooling.
No, Heidi, you didn't just come on this show just to sit there. So I want Dr. Olivo and Heidi to tag team this. So Cary, you said that your stroke was right. It was 6 millimeters, and it was, where was it located again?
It was in the left parietal region over. The layman's term, I believe, is your internal capsule.
Okay.
That's both layman and medical. So
Medical.
And as far as I know, your internal capsule is where. Let me get my hands in here. Is where your small blood vessels transfer. Where your large blood vessels transfer to your small blood vessels, and this capsule is in control of the connections from your brain to your body. And so my stroke, it clogged the small artery there, small blood vessel, and it started to kill the connections. It's like pouring water on an electrical, like if you had a fuse box with zillion wires to it, and you pour water on it, and you just would fry this whole thing. And so now there's this separation in there where my brain is still intact. I can hear everybody, I can think, I can do everything. But when I wanted to talk or I wanted to move a finger right here, the signal wasn't getting to it. And so one of the interesting things, actually a little therapy, she told me when I was in acute therapy, I think her name was Janelle. Her first question was, so you understand that there's nothing wrong with your leg, right? Because I was having a hard time walking. And I said, well, it's not working. She goes, yeah, but physically, there's nothing wrong with it. And I had to let that sink in and realize that, oh yeah, it's this connection. I'm chill. It's this connection that came apart. That's not. It's like, yeah, my leg could move. There's nothing wrong. It's not broken or anything else. And so that also that was one of the first mental things I started to try to let it sink in, understand, and apply it to fingers and everything on my right side. So what she said there was just really thought provoking. So you have to, people out there, if you've had this stroke, if you're having a hard time seeing, smelling, touch, anything, understand that there's nothing wrong with the physical part of you. It's just there's a connection there that has to get back, and that's where Dr. Olivo comes in, and your therapist, and all these people to help you start trying to help that regrow those connections.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a really great analogy. I think what's remarkable that this is 6 millimeters and someone had complete weakness that they couldn't lift up their arm. And so that's how the connectivities on one hemisphere, they go into some small networks to relay through the brainstem to the body part. And so when you have a stroke in vital areas, like some areas into the internal capsule, and when it affects motor or sensory, it could be very devastating. So I always say strokes could be a game of real estate too. All it takes is a little small piece of real estate and you lose it. It could hurt someone's pocketbook. Well, it could hurt someone's life when it comes to stroke, or have a very challenging recovery. And at first, it's very shocking for someone to go through experience like that.
Right.
And his language he was severely slurred, and having, a wife that's an expert, it's just phenomenal. So I already knew that he was going to have the person that was going to push him, not just during a hospital stay or rehabilitation or through therapy, but every single day for the rest of his life.
Yeah, I feel a little sorry for him about that, but we're a really good team, and he's a very good patient, so it's worked out really well.
So the going back to the connection aspect now, how do you guys work together, like in tandem, as far as Dr. Olivo and Heidi, as far as the connection aspect and the speech aspect? How does it work in tandem, Heidi, from your point of view, when you're trying to get the person or the patient to work on their speech recovery? Like, do you notice like the connection, the reforming, or how are you trying to do this therapy?
Yeah. Cary really gives me way too much credit. It really, Dr. Olivo's the star of the show here. I just implemented the strategies. I know that I've worked with stroke patients and traumatic brain injury patients over the years. Cary, had impairment the first night, but by the next morning it was much worse. So he had function on the right side. He was weak, and then the next morning was unable to move on the right side. And so his speech went along with that, fine motor being impacted significantly with the stroke. So what we know in speech therapy is, in the old days, we used to give people isolated movements to do, like isometric movements for muscles. And what we've really found is that's not very functional, and people don't really recover speech function from individual.
I don't know what that is. So can you explain what that is? Isometric.
Isometric means isolating a muscle group and just working on that muscle group outside of something that is not functional. So for instance, if I told you, put your tongue up behind your teeth, and I want you to repeat that movement 10 times, that's like an isolated movement. Okay. Whereas a more functional movement would have you move your tongue in the same motion, but to produce a sound or a word. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So for Cary, originally he was very slurred, and so we implemented some strategies to get him to overproduce the sounds or over-articulate the sounds. So opening his mouth very wide, really being intentional about the way he moved his tongue, really focusing on trying to move the weak side of his lips up and out of the way as much as he could. Initially, there wasn't much movement there, but that improved as his awareness and his functionality returned. So it starts there, and then we moved towards sounds and words that were more difficult. So multisyllabic words, or words that have, different parts. So the word motorcycle or popsicle is much harder to say than the word is or the or and.
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
Right, exactly. Oh boy, we actually used that one. That's very good. Yeah, see, you're a speech therapist.
Show off.
So we just moved from the strategies for clear speech into real functional speech for him. And then as that progressed, we just moved the target further and further until his speech is much more functional now. I don't know if you pick it up right now, but he has weakness still in the right cheek. And by the end of the evening, his P's, the puffing of his P's will end up in his cheek. So there's still some residual weakness there. But for the most part, his speech, as you can tell, is completely functional.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot faster now.
Yeah, a lot faster.
Very good.
I wish we had an earlier recording of how you were and how you are now.
I do, but I don't think I could access it. I actually videoed him all the way along from the very first morning and then at increments along. And for the purpose of first showing him where he's come from, because sometimes you don't remember in the midst of all of that and you can't self-reflect as it's happening.
Right.
But also in those moments when the recovery slowed down and he was getting frustrated because there wasn't certain return back, I could show him those videos and, this is where you were and look how far you've come. So it might be slower, but you're still making progress. And I think that's been very motivational.
I had on Lindsay Unger, who is a speech pathologist from UCSD Medical Center.
Great.
And that's one of the techniques that she used, because I spoke about it many times on my show about, therapy. And then once, because Dr. Olivo said you have a certain time frame that you can progress in your therapy. And then once you reach that time frame, it starts to slow down.
Right.
So, you come to the thinking that that you're not progressing in your therapy.
Right.
So, keeping a log, so to speak, as you were saying that you kept a log for Cary, and the same thing that Lindsay did. That shows that those minute changes over time, you can say, yes. They are happening because, and I use the reference as, when you go on a diet, you don't see the changes because you see yourself every day. The only way that that the diet is working is when you jump on the scale and you're losing weight.
That's right.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. And it can be frustrating because in rehabilitation, as recovery happens, it happens so rapidly or tends to happen more rapidly in the first 6 months. And Dr. Olivo, I don't know, I can't remember now what timeline, but in the rehab world, that's kind of what we used to quote. 6 months is the most rapid return. From 6 months to a year, it begins to slow. And then from a year on out, it is much slower than it was that original year. But when you reflect back on how far you've come, there really has been change over that time.
Absolutely.
Is that,
we used to, in strokes, we used to not do physical therapy right away. In the hospital, we'd wait a couple of days, wait till their blood pressures got a little bit better. And now we're initiating it from very day one to get the evaluation. So we really want to optimize the situation from day one to get those networks functioning, even if a person feels like they're not moving the arm. And I think that's the biggest frustration sometimes is when you don't see anything moving and you're like, oh my God, am I going to be like this?
Right.
If you're not speaking correctly and you're drooling on one side and you're having to have a modified diet or you can't swallow. And so a lot of patients, as you know, they end up getting a PEG tube in the very beginning. And so it is very frustrating sometimes for a lot of stroke patients because of the deficits are so severe. But when they have that mental mindset that they want to overcome and continue on, it is just phenomenal, the recovery that happens. And so I think that's a very important marker, is when you see that person continuing to try, they have a great support system around them, and it's just phenomenal. Speech therapy, I just want to say, is like it's cornerstone in neurology. We don't just use them for stroke. We use them for and it's not we actually are a team.
Right.
speak in this
Well.
fashion. And when it comes to Parkinson's, voice therapy, all
Right.
these different diseases that we treat, we really utilize speech therapy to its capacity. It's very vital. It's just as vital as any other. Actually, it's probably just as vital or more vital than any other functionality that we have in our body. And you imagine, not being able to speak, not being able to swallow, not being able to voice an opinion. It's one of the most
Right.
frustrating things
Right.
that someone has. Someone that's recovering from aphasia, that getting different words
Right.
coming out of their mouth incorrectly. So it is a cornerstone of stroke recovery.
Yep.
And getting evaluated from the very beginning. The importance of getting evaluated in the very beginning for stroke could be from someone aspirating.
Yep.
So it's basically a standard measure now for any stroke center to have a good speech therapy program around it, because number one, you're ensuring safety of the patient, and then number two, you're ensuring recovery for the patient as well. So that's very remarkable. On that same subject of stroke and the ischemia, do you guys remember what some of the studies we did to try to figure out why you had a stroke, since you were a very healthy individual?
Yeah, so this is interesting. I believe it took about 2.5 weeks before we maybe figured out what caused a stroke, because just for those out there, I was 52. I had like grade A low cholesterol, no heart problems, no blood pressure, no diabetes, very healthy. And I do like to drink soda, but occasionally. But yeah, we're really trying, just super healthy. And that's why when the stroke happened that Monday morning, there was just in my head, I'm like, wait, I'm not a diabetic. I'm not, I don't have any heart. I'm like, that all that is for older people, but it's not. So I forgot where I was going, Dr. Olivo.
What was your stroke?
Oh, so what caused it? They did the blood work they finally did on it. It came that we found out that I had a gene called MTHFR. And MTHFR apparently, and the way we found out, which I thought was interesting, is Dr. Olivo saw my B12 level, and he goes, "You do eat plenty of meat, right?" And I said, "Oh man, carne asada, you name it." And he said, "For someone your size, it should be like over 500." And yours is coming out at, I think he said, like 240 or something below, 200, low 200 range. And he said, for somebody else, that's not a problem, but for you, that is a problem. And so B12, and also my body did not work out, was also folic acid. So having MTHFR, apparently it doesn't allow those two things to methylate properly when you take them in their raw form. And so if that's not methylating properly, then it can allow the viscosity of your blood to get a little thicker, not run so smooth. And I was not a heavy water drinker before my stroke either. And so I'm sure, being a teacher, you got the bottle of water, you open it in the morning, and by the time you go home, you're like, holy smokes, I didn't even touch it. And that doesn't happen anymore, by the way. But I definitely did not drink. I didn't hydrate like I should. I did on occasion, but nothing. And so realizing, going through not only when I was doing rehab, but I was also learning, doing research quite a lot with Dr. Olivo and other therapists, and learning what is MTHFR and why, how does it interact with your body. And so that not hydrating and having that led to what we feel was probably the highest candidate to find out that's why I had the stroke.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so it's a very interesting gene that it's really a small mutation within the gene that changes this, and it's usually causes that methylation process. And methylation process, it happens everywhere. It happens within our neuroconnectors, our neurotransmitters, within our brain, and also happens within our cell. When it comes to stroke, it happens within the cells of our cell, our walls, the lining within the vessels. So it causes hardening of calcification and plaque buildup. And so if small arterioles within the small little arteries within the lacunar systems, or the systems where the internal capsule's at, can be susceptible to those type of strokes. And so it's really important to kind of determine what's the cause of stroke, because if we could prevent another one, I always say this is now we know we lost everything in Vegas. We had a stroke, right? Now we have to make the odds more our favor, right? Because
right.
So is that something that is treatable by medicine? He has to stay away from certain foods, both? How does that work?
What are you doing?
So what I'm doing is I actually take a very small, I have the baby aspirin I take daily. I have a really small amount of Lipitor that I take. And then for the B12 and the folic acid, I actually order the pill in a methylated form. So I just want to make sure I want to do everything we can. I don't want another stroke. And by the way, the supplement, it's just a supplement, B12 and folic acid, but it's not the one. You got to like special order it and get it in a methylated form. And it tastes great, by the way. I mean, you want to say, yeah. No. And so that, and I drink a lot of water. I'll tell you what, anybody listening to this right now, if you could just make sure you have at least 2 cups of water at your bedside before you go to bed. And when you wake up in the morning or even throughout the night, just sip it, just drink it. And make sure before you leave your bed in the morning, your 2 cups are gone. And that was one of the best things I learned in rehab. I saw pictures of the brain without dehydrated and with it hydrated. There's no comparison. We're America. We're just really bad. We're really bad at hydrating, and we need to hydrate. Everybody does.
So he also he's always been very good about his diet, but we've absolutely increased a lot of lettuce and vegetables, and just making sure that he's as healthy as he can be. And then he takes folinic acid because that's a methylated form, and I just did some research and felt like that was the best way to go for him with the MTHFR. But that's just personal bias.
Hey, sometimes that's what you have to do. I do, I'm a student by nature. So, if there's something that I feel like I need to look into, I need to research, I will take, this is just a scenario, I will take what, something that I've seen Dr. Olivo say, and I will research it to the 10th degree, and I will formulate my own educated opinion on, this is not something that Dr. Olivo told me to do, because I take Dr. Olivo's advice all the time.
Smart man.
I'm just saying this is something that Dr. Olivo had said, okay? This is a scenario here, but I will research it to the 10th degree and then formulate my own educated opinion. So that's kind of like piggybacking off of what you say. But speaking about piggybacking, I want to piggyback off of what Cary said about drinking water, and him saying that he has seen, photo or MRIs and CAT scans of what a brain looks like that's hydrated and what a brain looks like when it's not hydrated. So Dr. Olivo, can you elaborate a little bit and give some insight on the importance of hydration on your brain and what happens, because I've seen those MRIs as well how shriveled up it looks. So go ahead.
You could think about it as rush hour on the freeway when we have no water in our system or a little bit of water, and then when the traffic lightens up, then our arteries are running really well and the cars are just flowing. So we want to keep those cars or our blood flowing through by keeping the volume up, right? And so volume is very important when it comes to keeping our vascular space open for stroke. That's why most of the time when people have a stroke, we actually let their blood pressures ride high. If they're having an ischemic stroke, we let their blood pressures ride high for at least 24 hours to give some perfusion up to those brain cells that need it. So we get, a lot of people get really scared because they see blood pressure up to 200,
right?
And they just came in for a stroke,
right?
And we're like, don't worry, we're used to this.
Yeah.
But
I wasn't real comfortable with that. But I totally trusted you. So
and it happens. But I've seen the opposite where somebody will go to a center and they will have a stroke and they don't follow those things, or they didn't know, they didn't identify it was a stroke, and then they see the blood pressures are 200 and they rapidly decrease the blood pressures. And guess what happens? That stroke area doesn't get fed, and the stroke gets worse.
Right.
And so it is, the small little things that we do, we take for granted sometimes, of how we treat a stroke from the very beginning, of the blood pressure parameters, the medications that we start off. We start off aggressively with antiplatelet therapy. Actually, now recommendations are changing with antiplatelet therapy. So if he would have had a stroke, say yesterday, I would have started on aspirin and Plavix for 21 days. So that's how things are changing, because they're finding out more and more studies of how we treat the acute phase and how that could change the outcome in the long term. And so having antiplatelets is also kind of loosening up the cars as well, kind of helping them go on the freeway. The reason why we put him on Lipitor wasn't because he has bad cholesterol. It was because there's evidence that shows people that are on statin medications, especially acutely on, we put them on a higher dose to decrease inflammation of that cell wall and to decrease plaque formation as well. So again, this is Vegas. I want him to win.
Right.
I'm going to do everything in my power to have the odds in his favor to be able to overcome this, and hopefully never in his life have to repeat this type of thing.
Right.
And it's not just what we're doing acutely in the hospital, it's all the other little things that they're doing at their house, when it's, drinking water, exercising, all the therapy, all those things are just as important or more important. But it really takes a team, and the team's a family member to his work accommodating and being understanding of the situation. It's really, really important that everybody understands, are on the same page, and gives someone the ability to overcome the challenges that they have. It's a very unique story that you have, because of how small the stroke was, how devastating the weakness was, and what the cause was. I think that's very unique. So I really wanted you to share the story to the rest of the people, because someone might be able to identify with some of those parts.
Yeah.
Right. And Cary didn't have, that classic symptom we think of as the horrible headache that you've never had before. He never in the entire time had a headache. So the balance issue was really a little bit subtle initially. And I just really, when I talk to people, encourage people, you got to listen to your body. If something's off, especially when it comes to that, because we think classically that really bad headache and I'm going to know, and it wasn't a headache.
Yeah. So the really bad headache is for a subarachnoid hemorrhage.
Right. True.
And then
but
for the ischemic stroke, supposed to be for the weakness.
Yeah.
And it could be balanced, but a lot of people, if they catch it early, and your husband was very cognitive, very aware of what was happening to his own body, the fact that he had that type of insight,
right,
and the fact that he wasn't a macho man that says, I'm going to wait and walk this off. It's going to go away. I think that's huge. That's very important.
Yeah.
It's very important not only to pay attention to our bodies, but if you're feeling something odd,
Right.
don't be afraid to say something. A lot of times people want to just hold it in and not say something because, again, they're going to, I have patients all the time that tell me, if I feel a certain way, what do I do? I said, what do you think you should do? You should go get medical attention.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times people are afraid because they feel like if they don't have a stroke or if they didn't have a TIA, they feel less or, it wasn't a big concern.
Like they're over dramatic or something, right?
Yeah, they're being over dramatic.
Right.
But that's not the case. That's the case is most of the time we get strokes outside that window a lot of times that we could actually give TPA or give a clot retrieval device to bring it out for a large vessel occlusion. So the fact that time is brain, the faster we're able to deal with it, treat it, evaluate it, and the size of the deficit. Sometimes someone could come in with a stroke and they're early enough that they're barely having some weakness in their hands. And the next day at the hospital, they're completely flaccid.
Yeah.
And so it makes it hard for neurologists like myself and those evaluating a person coming in the door, whether to take the risk and give them a clot busting agent to try to break up that clot, given that he has minimal hand weakness at that time, because who knows, he might have complete hand weakness the next day.
Right.
And so those type of decisions and the decisions of going over the risk of giving some type of a blood clot busting agent like that goes with the family, because there's a hemorrhagic risk. There's a risk of bleeding in the brain of that. And not all the cases go perfect. I wish it was. I wish things were perfect science. I wish all my patients had a remarkable recovery like both of you guys have.
Yeah.
And so
me too.
Now
I could that comment right there. If I could just add, I really do wish people had the same recovery like Mark and I have had. I will say about 2 months after my stroke, we talked for, when you have a stroke, emotionally, your mind is, you cry and you laugh at the same time. Weird thing, it's uncontrollable. And I went to a support meeting that had other stroke victims there, just to be there and meet others and try to. I mostly went. I wanted to see if I could just be a help, because I knew, like, in the 2 months afterwards, I just had some miraculous function come back, and compared to where I was the next day. But I will say everybody's stroke is so different, and that evening it broke my heart, really. I was shocked to see people who had been there for 4 or 5 years still really rough, trying to speak, walk, lots of flaccid arms, and it was really hard for me. I didn't emotionally, I was not prepared for it, and but I just want to give people encouragement to stick with that.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. We see that. I see that in all different support groups, whether it's multiple sclerosis or whatever support group it is. So when someone feels like they've recovered or have very mild deficits that someone can't see, they really feel sometimes embarrassed to even show up.
I did feel embarrassed.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is, all those people there are determined to get better. That's what they're there for.
Absolutely.
And they're absolutely determined. And because they might not have some functionality, does not make them less capable.
Right.
And so I always phrase that sometimes I wish people to have a full recovery, to be as close as back as where they were baseline. But the reality is, and I always say this to people, everybody in this world is not the same person they're going to be in 10 years from now.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so every day we have to push ourselves to strive to be better. And there was one young lady that played soccer that really put it out there, and she's a phenomenal soccer player, and she is continuing to push her body to the limits. And she had, a devastating stroke. And it's just remarkable to see people push themselves to the limits, to whatever it is. And on the other hand, the other person that's really determined is their care provider, or their soulmate, or that person that's really there, or their family member. It could be their mother, their sister, whoever that person is, that's really encouraging them along the way to recover.
Right.
So it is. You should not feel. You should feel encouraged that they're there. You really should. And I'm really encouraged that they're really there, and they're learning. So, I think a phenomenal thing that you showed me last time, that I saw you recently, and we actually did a video conference like this. But he told me, I'm getting a little bit more functionality back on my hands by doing some Mr. Miyagi techniques.
Check this out.
So what were you doing?
So, well, since COVID started, as teachers, we've been doing our teaching from home. And so I also started to go, well, we've been wanting to paint our kitchen and do some, I'm sure Home Depot is crazy right now. But everybody's been doing some home renovations. I ended up just taking on a massive project. And
I'm not sure I understand.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. I took on a massive project.
Harry wants to join too.
We're doing a lot of sanding, the cabinets, kitchen cabinets and stuff. And when I first started, just getting my right hand and fingers to hold the sandpaper and trying to hold it right. So I've had experience. My brain knows how to do sanding, but my hand forgot. It didn't have the connection again. And all I can tell you is, by doing it over and over and just struggling and making your fingers do what they're supposed to do, I would watch my left hand sand, and then put the paper on my right hand and make my right hand do it. And because I was starting to get it, and the good thing and the bad thing of the cabinets, I would spray paint them, and I'd go, that is a horrible job. So I had to sand them again. Well, sanding them again got more therapy going for me, and I could feel we have a thing called tone for those who have the affected sides. The tone kind of fights you from allowing you to just let it be free, and I like to play the guitar. Well, I was able to get a little bit better picking fine motor skill going just because of that sanding, and it's been 2 years out. And so that I was super excited. I mean, after about, I don't know, it was a couple days, I went to Heidi and I'm like, watch this on my guitar. You got to see this. And just by doing that, I could tell it was working. And so Dr. Olivo, the joke between him and I is always about Mr. Miyagi. Wax on, wax off. And I'm telling you, a little bit of that every day. In fact, I was talking to Mark too about, I asked him about his therapy earlier, and he's kind of okay, dude, I'm sorry, but you're slacking a little bit on that.
I am.
And I'm sure his wife has a lot of projects for him around the house.
I have been doing a lot around the house, just so you know.
That's true.
I do procrastinate a lot as well. So something that should take me half a day might take me a day and a half. So
yeah, that is true. I mean, the time frame, you have to realize you have to give yourself five times
extra time.
right.
Time, but oh my goodness, you stick with it. It helps you be determined, and it helps pay off. Yeah. It just, you don't know you don't know how long something's going to take for it to come back, but just remember, keep working.
Yeah.
Remember that your brain still knows how to do it. It's just your body has to relearn it and get that connection. It's almost like it just needs a connection. It doesn't even really need to relearn. You're just trying to get the connection back. And that I've had definitely some great therapists. You know what? Can I share like 3 titles of books that have for motivation to help you be determined? This one right here. This is called Outliers. This book, one of the director acute therapy guys told me about this one. So I started reading this. This is absolutely huge to help motivate you on stick with it, grit, keep the grit, stay determined. Because it talks about hours of the thing that you're doing, how you become great at it. It talks about professional musicians, hockey players. It doesn't. What I love about it most is it. I kind of give it away, but they talk about the actual time involved, like hockey players when they're young, because of their birthday. If their birthday falls on a certain month, they actually get more time in a league. And so when they're like 13, 14, these 13 and 14-year-olds are so much better than the other ones who started like on their birthday, like it would be like a half a season later. It was interesting. So it told me that, again, practice, repetition will help you get there. And it's just like learning to play an instrument or anything like that. So it was cool to see that, because I'm sure some people have instant talent, but it was nice to see that you putting your determination into it and sticking with it, you're going to get some proficiency. No doubt about it. So that's one book. I think it's great. This one, My Stroke of Insight, I read this when I was in acute rehab, and this lady, PhD, man, if you read her story in there, she, like Dr. Olivo was saying earlier, she had the wherewithal to actually realize she's going through this stroke, and she's able to describe. To me, it sounds like she's hallucinating, but she's able to describe exactly what happened. It's so interesting. Well, for her, it was a big hemorrhage, and it was 8 years. 8 years for her, and when you listen to her talk and move, you would never know it. And she went through 8 years of basically she was spoon-fed from her mom. Again, a caretaker like her mom moved in with her and took over and helped her. But what I liked about that too was, hey, 8 years from now, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what am I going to be doing 8 years from now. 2 years has been phenomenal for me, but 8 years is, I mean, yeah. So I'm excited about that, and to see how never give up. And then one more book.
Go ahead.
This is where I learned more about MTHFR and other. Have you ever seen this, Dr. Olivo?
No, but with MTHFR, it's very interesting because people could get very scared because it's on a lot of genetic panels that are commercially available right now. And so we have to be very cautious of who really does have it and the right contents, and who should be more focused on it, or who's profiting over it.
Right.
So that's something that we have to be very cautious about when it comes to. And I'm a very I always tell people, well, if it's not going to break you and it's not harmful for you, I'm not one to tell you don't do it. But on the other hand, if someone's taking advantage of people in a population, we got to be very careful. I think that book's I have not read that book, but it probably illustrates all the different ways methylation actually processes within our body and what you should do to take care of yourself. Can you give a little synopsis for us?
Yeah, can you help me
Well,
with that?
you're absolutely right, and you do have to be so careful because it's somewhat commonplace. It's like we know with Cary, he just happens to be the 1% that it really significantly impacted. So really for us, the MTHFR book came recommended from one of his therapists at his acute rehab. And it just explained it to us. We could read through it, and we could read it at our own pace to understand. But if you're not careful when you read through it, you think, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to die," from everything, because many MTHFR authors want to relate everything to MTHFR. So you really do have to be careful and wise about how you're interpreting the data. But it really was just explaining the methylation cycle and how they feel MTHFR relates to a variety of diseases, or some underpinning to a variety of diseases, and the ways in which they recommend you go about combating that. So it was a good knowledge base for us, but to be honest, I didn't read it all the way through. You realize that
I didn't either.
Yeah, it was but it was good information for us at the time as we were trying to understand MTHFR.
Yeah, understanding the methylation cycle within our body, that's biochemistry at its finest.
Right.
Where you're really looking at all the different type of cycles, the Krebs cycle, all the way we process vitamin B12, how B12 is a cofactor to many pathways, how folate is as well. And we realize how complex. People don't realize someone that can have vitamin B12 deficiency for a significant period of time, and they could become paralyzed. Mm-hmm. And so a small little process like that, I shouldn't say paralyzed. They could be significantly impaired where their walking ability is completely affected, or their cognition. So for B12, we check for memory loss.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it's a mimic for
cognitive
Alzheimer's.
impairment. Yeah.
So they have a lot of different roles and pathways within our system, and it's quite complex. And there's probably series of books on how these factors are. And till this day, I don't understand. I'll be honest, I don't understand the insides and outs. But when you do have something, and you had a stroke, and we have something to say, okay, this is not normal. This is a little abnormal, and you have something like B12 in addition to it that's lower, and those are in the ranges between 20 or 200 and 400. 20% of those patients can be actually B12 deficient. And so even when someone's older and I have someone in that age group, I recommend B12 supplementation. B12 supplementation could be tricky because if it's not absorbed through the GI tract, they might have to get things injected as well. So it's really important to realize how complex it is, and how we're not going to understand every single way and mechanism, but not be afraid too that, oh my gosh, this is the end all because I have this change in my genetic code slightly that I'm going to end up with all these processes that are going to be affected in the near future.
Right.
So I think it's really important to understand what you have, why you have it, what you need to do to help prevent it. And also it helps you educate other people as well. It helps me do my job, that's for sure. What you guys are doing here, what Mark is doing here is if I ever find a patient, that fits this type of class, I'll always refer Mark's videos.
It's a great resource. It's really great, Mark.
It'll be a great resource. And so I think those books, it would be a great resource for some of the patients that might need some insight to help improve themselves or better themselves, get some inspiration,
right?
As well, because sometimes we have to look outside our doctors or outside our family to get that inspiration.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's, that's one of the main, actually, that is the main reason why, I started this whole thing, is because, that a lot of people, and I was one of them, think, and we already talked about this too, Cary, so you can jump in here pretty much right after I'm done, think, when this happens to them, they think, why me? Why did this happen to me? So I started this to give people, hope and inspiration, by sharing my testimony, by bringing on other people and sharing their testimonies and showing how far they have come along and their progress, bringing on Dr. Olivo and sharing with people that, that yes, you had, an impairment with your stroke, but you can reconnect neurological pathways so that you can, gain function in the affected area, and, as I said in the beginning of the show, just so, you can pull bits and pieces of, from each show and it becomes something beautiful, and we discussed that earlier today, Cary, that, everything does happen for a reason. And you said that at the beginning of the show. And you also better give a shout out to your students here, Cary.
Oh my goodness. Well, I haven't seen any of my students since March, but gosh, I definitely, a lot of them are moving on to high school, and I have some 7th graders. We'll see them next year. And I have a great group of students I get to work with I'm going to give a shout out to Mountain Shadows Middle School. And a shout out to my district, Newview district, for the support that I got from them.
There you go.
They said, what do you need when you come back? What do you need? And all I needed was a substitute. I needed someone else in there just for support. I felt in my brain, my brain's still working. I felt like I know what I need to do. But you also, when you transfer your thoughts and everything to your mouth and to your hands, if it doesn't come out right, it doesn't hurt to have that other extra person. So I was blessed with a sub for 2 months, and they said you can have them for as long as you want, but I kind of went for 2 months, and I felt that, and I love the guy who was helping me, and but I felt that was enough to. I'm like, you know what? Now that I've made it this far, it's time to take the next step. And I finished the rest of the year by myself, and so I give them a shout out for sure. The other thing you're talking about, when you're like, wow, why me? And I remember lying in the hospital bed, and it was something, people would say, this is tough and all this, why me? But at the same time, just because the Lord and all that, it's like, why not you? I mean, he's still in control.
Yep.
God is still in control, and he knows your path. I mean, just put Jeremiah 29:11 in there. He knows the path that he has for you, and that's right. Check out Mark. I'm so getting some of those from my students in my class. My junior high students are gonna love that. He knows. Like, he knows what you need before you know. And I remember laying there going, okay, so God put me in the second career for school and to teach, and it was really tough at first, but my last 7 years have been great. I thought, and he put me there. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's a whole nother testimony. But the thing is, when I got the stroke and I'm sitting in bed, I'm like, wow, is that it, Lord? Is it like, did I get this because now I'm going to go do something else? Or am I going to stay there and Iron Man is a big thing in my STEM lab. So I started thinking, I'm going to get an Iron Man hand. And I'm gonna rule this robotic hand. I started thinking, those kind of things. I'm like, wow, what do you have for me, Lord? What's in store? What's next? And what was really next is sharing His word with. I got to share His word with a lot of people, both therapists and a couple other patients too. While I was in acute rehab, which was. It just brought a lot of joy. I mean, people hardly have a hard time believing that. Here you are going through a stroke. All I can tell you is that I had the peace that passes all understanding. And I just knew either if I didn't get back to where I was going to get, I knew God still He knows me. He loves me. He knows He's going to do something where I was almost looking forward. What am I going to do next? To support my family and other things like that. But God is awesome. That's all I can say. And He's blessed me with the greatest medical team and friends and family. And it's just, you know what? I can walk through the shadow of death. No problem.
There you go. Boom.
All right.
Dr. Olivo, do you have any concluding thoughts for the community?
No, I could echo on that. I think faith has a lot to do with it, and believing, and even if you don't know the reasons, you don't know the why or the what ifs, we don't have all the answers sometimes, and that's okay. I just wanted to share something. This was given to me by a patient that made this. It's a ceramic cup. It says cool. Dr. Olivo. And it's like made out of jeans. It's like a small little jeans. But it's a patient that has hereditary neuropathy, that can't see and can't feel and doesn't walk good, can't feel anything from her hands, no dexterity. And she made this by contouring it on the sensation on her face.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Can we see it again? Can you put it in the middle? We didn't get to see it. There you go.
I love it.
Wow, that is super neat.
And so sometimes when I have a rough day, I take a look at it and it's like, no, you could do whatever you want. So it's one of my special gifts for one of my patients. It's, so definitely, it doesn't matter how someone is, they still have some functionality, and that just proves you can't see, can't touch, can't feel, and still overcomes.
There's still value in life.
Oh my God, so much value.
Right.
Yes. So it's remarkable, and to have that faith and to have that blind love, it's really, really important. And so hopefully everybody has their support system to be able to have someone along the way, and that's why support groups are really good, because you'd be surprised some people don't. Right. And so instead of becoming someone that understands one another, sometimes someone's the actual person that's helping them anchor through a certain situation as well. And maybe anchoring is not the right word. Floating them through or pushing them through. Catapulting.
Chugging them along.
Exactly.
So my concluding thoughts for the community is definitely, piggybacking off of both what Cary and Dr. Olivo said, is, choices determine our future here. So, we might get knocked down, our pedestal once we suffer this traumatic event down here. But, you have to be determined to pick yourself back up down here and get back up here, and this right here, what happened is just a hurdle. It's not a brick wall. Okay. So you get back up here, and then you're left here to make a choice to either continue down the path of recovery, or you left the choice to either fall back down here, or you left the choice to go down another path of recovery. Don't stay down here. Pick yourself back up. You can do it. I bring on everybody on this show here to help you grab little piece of inspiration
Right.
each and every week, to grab a little piece of it, a little piece here, a little piece there, a little piece here, a little piece there, each and every week, putting it together, and each and every week every time it becomes something more and more beautiful. So thank you for watching. Thank you for coming. And as always, Dr. Olivo, I appreciate you so much for supporting me.
Yeah.
So much for coming on and being the best co-host ever. And he bounced out. I don't think he meant
bounced.
to do that. I don't think he meant to do that. But anyways,
Yeah.
Cary,
Right.
if you don't mind, can you go ahead and exit us out of here with our prayer?
With a prayer, for sure. I'd love to.
All right.
Here we go. Heavenly Father, all I can say is you're amazing. You're the one who created us in this beautiful world, and you created us in your image, Lord, and you want the best for us. And Lord, I just thank you for this show. I thank you for Mark. I pray that you would bless and heal the people who watch this show and are looking for help and inspiration. Lord, I pray that they'll just be directed right to you, and let them know that there is a way out. The way out is one of the things that I learned from you, Lord, is you have to go through it. The only way out is to go through. And help them, Lord, to make them know that you're right there by their side all the way, and help them to only make decisions for recovery. And Lord, I'm just feeling, Lord, that I want us to say a quick prayer for America right now. We just have a lot of terrible things going on, and pray that you would intervene and you would help everyone in this nation to come back and unify and make America strong again. One nation under God, Lord. But getting back to Mark, and I just pray that this is a successful. I pray that it will go out to the people in need, and that they'll look to you, Lord. May you be glorified with everything that happened tonight, Lord. We love you. In Jesus' name. As God people said, amen.
Amen. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us, Mark. This is awesome.
All right.
Hold on. Let Dr. Olivo say bye. What happened, Dr. Olivo?
I'm sorry. Somehow I got cut off, but I prayed with you guys.
There you go.
Amen.
All right, everyone.
Love you, Dr. Olivo.